Perfect color me. Extreme ways that help me out late at night. Extreme places I had gone, but never seen any light. Dirty basements, dirty noise, dirty places coming through. Extreme worlds alone, did you ever like it then? I would stand in line for this. There's always room in life for this.
So, hey guys.
Hey, what's up?
And look where we are today. We are at a installation site for Revolution Solar. Because guess what? We got back to DC, and Jesse Wilensky asked us if we wanted to see their site, and of course we did. Because we're gonna have to find one soon and install one. So before we can do that,
we have to take a look at the installation and also find out what they're all about.
Look at this hands-on experience. Let me see if I can. They're installing it on the roof, but anyways, if you can see from up here, there we go, see? But anyways, right now we're about to do an interview with Eddie Cervantes, who is the, project manager for this installation, and there's going to be some exciting stuff.
Yeah, we're going to hear a lot about what he has to say about not just like installation, solar, and like the process itself, but let's see what he has about, like, what are his thoughts about solar itself.
Yep, let's hop in.
So yeah, basically what we're doing here today with these houses is that we're helping out other solar companies, doing some upgrades for them, where we're switching out the panels to higher wattage panels, or panels that produce more and better. So it ends up being better for the people that have them. So there's like different styles of contracts that different solar companies will do, particularly in DC. It's a really, really good investment of sorts to be able to do solar, because the government is spending some money, or requesting people to spend money on that. So, is there any particular questions you guys might have?
Yeah,
about?
I mean, what efficiency increase do you expect to come
So
out?
I believe these are going from like 250 watt panels to like 200, depending on where we're going to like 360. In some places we've been able to upgrade them to 445s. They fit, so it's quite a bit of increase. It ends up being a lot more energy being produced for the homeowner, and depending on the structure, like whoever's receiving the solar renewable energy certificates or credits, then would be able to also generate more, so they're able to get paid from the government, have to more money for those.
So you said you're doing a switch out where you just switch out like old solar panels from new ones, or do you just compare it?
Yeah. I mean, so we'll look at whatever's going on with the system. So if there's anything wrong with it, we'll end up fixing that. For the most part, for these projects right now, we're switching out from older panels to newer panels.
Yep.
But most of our crews, like we have 4 crews, most of them are doing a new install a day. So we're doing installs that are new. This is not one of our new installs. This is, like I said, we're partnering with another solar company and helping them out, which happens sometimes. It's interesting because I think that a lot of the solar companies in DC know each other, and like we'll end up either like hiring somebody from like a crew from another company or something like that to help them out, depending on what the wave of sales like is happening for them. They'll end up requesting some assistance. So but we've done some really cool projects that we did this church down near the mall And it was a big roof. It was like 200 and some solar panels. That took us like 4 days to do, and that was pretty fun. But mostly we do residential houses, kind of like this, where we're selling anywhere from like 15 to 30 panels, and it's all over the city and all around. We'll do anywhere outside of DC as well, but a lot of the clients are around the DC metro area, where Petco can hit around DC as well. So some of like Capitol Heights, like the vicinity of DC, will end up being a part of that as well. And so it's interesting because like even whenever I ended up getting this job and I heard all about this solar thing happening in DC, it almost sounded too good to be true kind of thing. Like, well, like how much investment is happening in this area, and I was like, wow, that doesn't sound right. And then I did some research, and no, I mean it's good. It's legitimate. Like there's like a lot of DC is the hottest market for solar right now for all aspects involved. Like the homeowner is able to get, depending on their scenario, either free electricity, or like if they're able to like fund it themselves or finance it themselves, they can end up getting paid for the electricity, the SRACs, and so I think it's a no-brainer. If people are homeowners, they can. It ends up extending the life of the roof generally, is what my understanding is of solar panels, is that like you can extend like 5 to 10 years for the roof. But that being said though, I think it's smart for people that have had older roofs to kind of like redo them before the solar panels go on there. So oftentimes our company, in particular Revolution Solar, will assess that and we'll say, hey, if you want a new roof, we can include that in the install. And we have roofers that we work with, people end up hiring their own roofers, but if we do it, I believe there's various scenarios where it can be included in that like contract and processing of the.
So typically, how long does it take your team to do a new installation like this? And also, how long would it take you to do like, well, I guess something like this, like a switch out?
Yeah. So the switch out these guys are doing, it's 3 guys, and they're doing probably like 2 or 3, maybe 4 a day, depending how intricate it is, because it's not like they're having to redo everything.
Right,
they're removing the panels and putting new ones in there. But our teams consist of 4 installers and 2 electrical technicians, and so 6 people altogether. And then they'll do one whole install from start to finish in 1 day.
Wow.
If there is some drywall that needs breaks, so depending on where the main breaker box is in the inside of the house, sometimes I have to cut a strip of drywall to run the conduit and the studs or the joists.
And is that because there's no legislation that you have to have this conduit in DC?
No, there is legislation.
There is now.
You have to have conduit in DC everywhere. Like I don't know. Well, I guess maybe not. I can't say
Jesse
everywhere.
was telling us that there's a very easy fix that can be implemented. Just if they legislated, I think a certain electrical wiring pattern to be you just have to put like an extra wire or 2, and then it will be way easier to install. You won't have to drill a hole.
Right.
And that's already done in many places, but not in DC.
Right. So yeah, most houses don't have like a conduit pipe run from the roof or from somewhere to go into the house. People aren't really thinking of that. Even like maybe new construction might be thinking of that, but that's not often like in their thought. If they're not already planning on solar panels or they're not using that as a sale point for their houses, then they're not doing it because it's more work. So what we do is we end up running oftentimes the conduit on the outside, and you kind of see in this one. And again, this is not one of our installs, but we do very similarly, where there's like this tube that's running from the top along next to the gutter, and then it goes down to the bottom. And at the bottom you have 2 different boxes down there. It looks like these ones have 3, but really oftentimes we use 2. One of them is in this system, I believe that's the inverters down there, and then they have an emergency shutoff. So in DC, the thing that you have to have outside of the house at first floor level and accessible is an emergency shutoff, so they can cut the power to electricity. That's one of the biggest things. You can't just have the wires hanging loose. You definitely do have to have a conduit. But it's okay to be on the outside. Perhaps in some other counties and locations, it would require the conduit to be run inside the walls. But I don't. The one place where we run into issues not being able to run the conduit outside is in historical homes, and oftentimes we just have to find a workaround where we'll go in the back of the house where it's not visible. Like usually you just want it in like the visible areas to not have the conduit run. And and then the combiner box. So a lot of these systems will have the software that measures how much energy is produced, and then it will send it out to whatever program, and either the installer, both the installer and the homeowner are able to check in on their production oftentimes. Now, Revolution Solar have been using M-Phase a lot, and Solar Edge. We've used Solar Edge in the past, so it depends on the size of the system, what company we go for the products. But with M-Phase, we end up using microinverters, so every single panel has its own little inverter on it. So then that allows us, through the combiner box or the IQ, like the computer brains of it, it lets us know if there's one particular panel that's out, versus like some older systems, it'll be like the whole system, and it's kind of hard to know which panel is the one that's the issue or which is not. But a lot of the newer technology is able to let you know exactly if there's like one that's wrong, it's not producing as well, and then we just send our techs at that point and diagnose it. We have like service teams that go out there and just check in on the different systems, make sure they're working properly. So, yeah.
And with all this, upgraded wattage and upgraded power efficiency, does that end up being more of a, I guess, burden on the wiring or on the grid in some cases?
So the grids in the city are rated to be able to handle the various loads that are going through them. So we're not like necessarily increasing the amount of or like into a deep way affecting the city's grid, right? We're actually like helping, the electricity is just like being replaced. Instead of more electricity from the outside coming in, it's just whatever's electricity is being produced in these panels. Any excess that's not used by the home will go right into the grid, and then your neighbor will end up using it, or your neighbor's neighbor, wherever it goes, right? And that's why it's important. Like in some homes, we'll end up having some older meters that need to be upgraded. So Pepco will come out and change the meters, because the older meters will only go one direction. Because they're like, oh, the house is just consuming, it's not producing electricity.
Yeah.
But now they are. So now it needs to have a meter that goes the opposite direction, so that Pepco is able to know if the house is producing or like using, And the wires inside of the house aren't affected by them, because each individual circuit that's installed to each breaker is already sized for that breaker, so it's not like that's being affected. We do sometimes have to change the wires that are running from the panels to the inverter box, because like those size wires, depending on the gauge, you have like 14 gauge, 12, 10, 8 gauge, 6, and sometimes 4 gauge. Those are for like really large systems. And it's funny because like the smaller the number, the thicker the wire. You would think it would go the other way, but it's goes this way. So sometimes we have to switch the wire along with the panels, but for the most part, I think they end up being pretty okay, because it's not. It depends, right?
Yeah.
It's like you can go with 2 different size wires, and when you install it, and it still would work and be approved by inspectors either way. So like it depends on which that day what wire the crew that installed it had. At least for these installs.
What would you say is the toughest part of this whole installation process?
Oh man, being on the roof in the hot
Yeah.
weather, that's like, and even in the cold weather, I mean, like these guys are going up and down ladders. They're carrying those big beams that you see up top of they also have to carry them up top they're using either like hand pulleys or they're like, carrying them, and so it's a little dangerous, like if people have fear of heights, this isn't their industry for them, because you're like on a ladder every day, and so I would say that's the toughest part. And other than that, it's a regular kind of like construction job. You're interfacing with the clients, the people that live in the houses. Sometimes it's a homeowner, sometimes it's a tenant, and so having to be able to have conversations around what works for them, what looks right for them, and like I was saying earlier, the install, sometimes we'll have to return to do the drywall on the inside, like do the finishing, sanding, and painting, and so scheduling kind of scenarios come up.
So what's the most enjoyable part about installing solar?
The most enjoyable part, for me, it's knowing that I am helping people have a reduced spill, like they're not spending as much in their lives. They're able to like focus those resources into other areas of their life, and it's contributing to being able to have a more diversified energy source. Because I think that I know that I remember reading, knowing that there's a lot of centralized power in a lot of parts of the USA. And that's one of the biggest, I guess you could say, threats to security. That if there's some sort of attack on that grid, and power goes out, it could end up causing a lot of injuries and potential deaths, depending on what where the energy is, how long it's out for. And so this just brings a little bit more security to the community as a whole. It brings more security to the homeowners as well. I think that for very specific security, something that we don't do because it's just a lot more money and people don't have to spend the money on it, would be to add batteries, so they could like store their energy in case of an outage. Then they can also be able to provide their electricity. As it is, the solar panels that are being installed without batteries, even if like the grid goes out, there's a high chance that they won't be able to still use their electricity, because even though there's enough electricity being generated for the house, it would be being like sucked up into this to the grid immediately, because there's so much demand for it that like they wouldn't be able to necessarily use it right away. However, if they had batteries and energy was stored, then they would be able to use it immediately. And so having this system on their house, if they end up wanting that someday, they want to save up money and they want to do it, then they can do that. They can make that addition. But regardless of that factor, just having that solar there is working towards those goals, like DC, sustainable DC goals of being able to have clean, renewable energy within the sustainable energy within the parameters of the community. So that feels good. I personally believe that localized resources, whether it's energy, water, food, like relocalizing our methods of production is really empowering for the community. And it's globalization has done a lot of good things for the advancement of technology, and it also has made us dependent on a lot of other people in the world, and we are one world, so that's cool. And also, I wish people knew how to like take care of their needs better locally. Like how to like grow their food, how to where to go to find the materials that are sourced locally, and I think it's a transitional process, and these are steps in the process for that, which is why I'm in this field at this point in my life. Whether I'll be in it forever, who knows, right? But it feels good, right? It feels better than doing something that's just very like vain or very not contributing to society. I feel like this is a good combination. Yes.
So are these systems retrofitted potentially to have battery systems?
So we don't end up doing they can be retrofitted.
So you could potentially just add a battery.
You could add a battery or multiple batteries. Yeah, if you had a space that you could like build a space for the batteries and be able to have that, you could do that. They're not designed to be done that. Like we don't have that in mind, because oftentimes people don't do that. But you could take out the point where I guess at some point either before the shut-off or after the shut-off, depends on where the engineer would approve the install. That's where you would design, like you would essentially untie the shut-off, add the batteries there, and then reconnect, add another set of wires that would run to those batteries and be able to have the energy stored and then used. And I think that like what would be difficult then also is how to make it so that you're able to switch your whole house to be able to like pull from the batteries to the grid. So that would also probably require some sort of upgrade in your main breaker box, some sort of like essentially like flip the switch, like now I'm getting my energy from this versus this, and so it would be a task, but definitely doable if anybody wants to do it.
Yeah.
Well, I see a lot of panels on almost every house, really, in this whole complex. So was this some, pre-designed project, or?
So yeah, I believe that the company that did this one was able to. I think that a lot of these houses might be under like an HOA of sorts, where they're helping them take care of the facilities and whatnot. And then I'm not sure if these are a lot of homeowners or not, or tenants. But either way, it was kind of like a snowball scenario probably, where like they either agreed to all do it, or like they were like, oh, my neighbor's doing it, it's a really good deal. Oh, my neighbor's doing it, it's a really good deal. And it just kind of like,
that's good.
Carries along, and people are like, oh, it's something that, because it kind of proves itself. Once somebody has a really good experience, and they're like, sometimes people have like $300 bills for electricity a month, depending on what they're doing in their house, right? And what kind of like energy they're using. But if you're saving that all of a sudden, after like just going through some paperwork, signing the contracts, and getting it done, like who wouldn't be like, wow, yeah, save all that cash, and I can now like save that, or like save for that vacation, or save for that thing that I needed, or like for my life, my kids, or whatever. That's cool. That's fun.
Yeah, that's way cool.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, I was gonna ask. So about like the batteries. So with the batteries and like storing solar energy, would it be like the excess to energy from the solar panels would just go like to the batteries instead of the grid, or?
Yeah, I guess you could set it up different ways. The way that I imagined that it would go, the way that I would do it in my house probably is I would have the solar panels feeding directly into the batteries, and then once the batteries are full, the excess just goes back into the grid. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and then that way, you can be using the batteries at night. You usually don't want the batteries to go below a certain amount, otherwise, depending on the kind of battery, otherwise their efficiency drops. So like you can set up automatic controllers where like once it hits a certain point, now you can switch to being from the grid, and so I'm really hopeful for a lot of the battery technologies that are coming out. Like the lithium-ion batteries have been like the ones that a lot of people are using. Like like the power walls, and the different companies are using those. Like even like the cars, a lot of electric cars are using that. But I've heard some potential good things coming from hydrogen-based batteries, and so I think that I know that technology is like, as it improves faster. Supposedly, it's what like they say in a lot of these innovative theories. And somebody was telling me like something about planned communities in this country like being not that old, so that they're pretty old compared to us, but really, if like in that short time span of humanity, we've been able to create all of this infrastructure, and now we've had all these advancements from like the Industrial Revolution and then the technological evolution, how much more we can advance, as time passes, and especially if we're able to focus our mental resources and our human power into advancing these technologies, which is, I hope, where our collective efforts in the form of tax dollars towards education, or whether it's just like people wanting to learn these things and focus on these things can make it happen. I know that businesses will invest oftentimes in what they feel can like generate the most profit in a quick, fast way, and you see some folks investing in those like harder to attain technologies that might not have a return very fast, which is I think where the holdup happens. So I would love to see subsidies towards these kinds of advancement of technologies, and like what you're seeing here in DC is kind of a step in that direction. Where the government is subsidizing the community's change towards that, because we're able to invest those community resources in that. And so whether it looks like solar, whether it looks like geothermal, whether it looks like more naturally sourced foods and naturally sourced construction materials, whether it looks upgraded transportation systems throughout the city, or like, wouldn't it be cool if like residents of a town were able to access community vehicles because they were funded by like the community, like it could look like buses, but it could look like more like electric, small kind of smart cars, in different places. And so this is just getting more like of my mental theories and stuff. But
no, that's great.
Yeah, I think that this is is the way to go. I mean, I personally, the reason I'm involved in solar, and the reason that I've been in this field for, it's only been like about 6 months that I've been with this company. But my goal in life is to build self-sufficient towns and communities, and I've been working towards that for over a decade.
Wow.
And so I lived in the food forest. I worked with Habitat for Humanity, teaching people how to build houses from scratch, from beginning to end. Build houses that are off-grid, designed with their own septic systems, waste systems, that are passive house designed. And so I'm trying to see how we can pull all these ideas together, right? So like I'm just kind of like bouncing from thing to thing. Like the way that I like to say is like I'm getting my gray hairs that will be able to let me get the resources that I need and the community that I need to make this happen. Because it takes a village to make a village, you know? Like, and one person can install the solar panels alone, or maybe they could, but it would be very, very difficult, you know? And so
Robinson Crusoe type of situation.
Yeah, I want to be able to have like everybody from all demographics, you know? Like I think it's a dream that we can all get behind, to be able to like have that freedom and that security of knowing that regardless of what is going on like globally or like beyond a certain parameter of our community, we can have our resources met locally, and we can do it in like a really cool way. You know, like we used to do it before all this technological investment, and that technological advancement like almost made us more dependent on it and on a more global scale, which is interesting, you know. I think we live more comfortable lives, and are we happier? Maybe. Could we? Are there people that still don't have their needs met? Yeah. And so how can we make it so that that's not the case? Whether that's like food, shelter, housing, community, mental health care, regular health care. I think the idea of people bootstrapping themselves into success is like this ingrained idea in the community, and absolutely, I think people ought to be able to really push themselves to their limits, not to the point of breaking, but like if you have plants that are growing and the wind is blowing, and this wind isn't blowing, and this plant doesn't experience any wind, it's going to be a very weak plant, you know?
Yeah.
And eventually, if a wind comes, it's going to break it. But if a plant grows up with some sort of stressing that's not so much that it kills it, it's going to have a thicker stalk, it's going to be able to withstand more, and it's interesting because a lot of people think that plants are in competition with each other, but there's like a mycorrhizal network, a network of fungi that's been discovered that like trees share nutrients with one another through that. And I think very similarly, we have been focusing on this very individualistic view of our society. Like it's like my success, what I'm doing, it's what like it's good for me and my family. But like we're one big family, you know, like we're all part of the same community. So how can we share resources better? You know, like this idea of hoarding all the resources doesn't, like, you know, meritocracy is important. Like if you do more and your efforts produce more benefit for others, then absolutely you should be able to withdraw more resources, and you know, and also the people that aren't able to take care of themselves right now for whatever reason, whether it's a physical, mental, spiritual ailment, could we somehow focus our resources to A, heal them, and then B, make sure that they're taken care of so they can keep going, you know, like, because we have so much food, we have so many resources. The earth's abundant, the sun can power everything, like, right? So this is like what that looks like. The sun does power everything, like, it powers the plants and everything, so I think that's cool. I'm excited for that comparison of like, we're putting leaves, essentially, you know, like tree leaves on roofs, and that seems like pretty interesting. Yeah, have you guys explored much on how solar panels are made?
A bit. We talked to a manufacturer. Yeah.
What is your guys' perspective about that?
Well, we're more focused on sort of like the production, like where it's being produced, and also like the different, like the way that the production like interacts with the market. For example, the manufacturer we talked to, it was the CEO of Oxfam Solar,
which
Solar.
is the only U.S.
main U.S. manufacturer.
The lone wolf kind of still U.S. solar production.
Yeah, because a lot of the producers and manufacturers are overseas in China, because of just like cost efficiency
Yeah,
and stuff
East
like
Asia.
that. But it's really interesting because the guy we talked to, he basically said almost the exact same thing as you, that we need to make sure that we take more of a local approach to this kind of thing, because it'll make the community stronger as a whole. It'll be like if we like have more, I guess, like decentralization and more of a local focus, and it's gonna make community stronger, and then it makes everybody stronger.
Right. Yeah, no, and like, interestingly enough, I met this person that's studying energy systems. Like that's their major, and I was talking to them about just what the electricity sources could be. I personally, for a while, have thought that geothermal seems like a really potentially exciting way. It seems like the Earth's temperature stays constant throughout forever. Throughout, maybe not forever, but for as long as we're alive on this planet, probably, right? And so being able to access that as a heat source, as an energy production source, is potentially exciting. And she said, the technology is not fully there yet, transferring that energy from one place to another, because of the distance that it will travel, so you lose that efficiency. But yeah, that's right. I don't think that solar panels alone are the answer. I don't think that coal alone is the answer, or fracking, or wind. Like there's a wave energy. There's a kinetic energy, like those things where you can set up strips like your roads, and the pressure of the cars going on and off of them can directly produce energy. I mean, there's a lot of cool ways to do so, but I think like a really neat way to improve our survival is how can we do with less energy? How could we also, like, as individuals, be like, wait, what are we doing with all this energy? We really need to have all these 50 lights on in our house all the time. We really need to be using all these like energy sucking devices all the time. That's not like a reasonable like direction, I think, to expect all of society to go, because like more humans are going to be born, right? So like we're gonna need to produce more and more electricity. But it's certainly a thought to consider, right? Especially an individual's wanting to go more off grid, and by off grid I don't mean like running off into the woods, but I mean like more like personally centralized grid, personally centralized power. Just gotta be mindful.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess to go on that tangent about solar.
Yeah.
If you think that panels are not the only solution, what about other solar technologies? What
about what?
Other solar technologies, solar energy. For example, we've had very mixed opinions about the Tesla Powerwall.
Yeah.
And I mean, what about even the Tesla solar roof? Same thing. Some people said it's a great technology for the future. Others say it's gonna take years. It's not practical now because it's so. It's just solar panels are standard. They're cheap now.
Yeah.
The Tesla solar roof is just highly customizable to the house. So it's the cost is just. And I mean, even when we went to Harvey Mudd, remember Tendai?
Yeah.
There's this professor who researched chemical paint that you could basically solar paint. Yeah. You just paint it, and then it collects energy in it.
Yeah, I think those technologies are great. I've seen like the films that they put on windows too, right?
Windows.
So see through the window, but it's like photovoltaic. I'm excited for all that kind of innovation personally. I think that if you have, it's one of the things that I want to do with my life in the long run, is be able to help create, like I said, towns, and that means developments that could be retrofits of existing homes. But really, I think that if we have a lot of developers spending time and energy and resources planning new communities and building them from scratch, planning them to be right and like righteous from the jump, I think is in the longer term going to save us more money. It's going to be more costly in the front. However, if you have financiers like banks that are willing to fund that because they see that value in that home in the long term, you're like, wow, yeah. And then you have people that are able to take on those mortgages and do those things, then then you can invest in things like what you're talking about, right? Like, because otherwise, like these kinds of technologies, and it's a history of all technologies, right? For the most part, they're really accessible to the very wealthy right off the bat, right? So like, people with a lot of money are able to pay that premium because it's like they're paying for all that effort that's taken to do the development costs, the research and development up to that point, and that way the investors or the entrepreneurs, or people that are inventing, can, you know, make a return on their efforts. And so right now, as it is, people are paying for a regular roof and solar panels. What if it was both? You know, like what if your shingles were your solar panels, right? Like what could that look like? And maybe your plywood comes with special strips of like some sort of like metal that you just kind of attach your shingles to, and like the nails are the conduits for that electricity. I'm just coming up with that like in the spot right now, right? But like that doesn't seem like that's unreasonable. I mean, maybe like there's some like safety things to work out with that, but like, you know, we can be we're very inventive creatures. So I think that where we put our attention, we can manifest it. Like the things that we're doing today, people from 200 years ago would say that that's like, it's magic. Like you guys are doing magic straight up, and it's like, I mean, kind of, right? But not really, because we're like just looking at physics and science and altering it. But like 300 years ago, they would have been like, you're alchemists, you're like wizards, you know, like how are you taking power from the sun and lighting the darkness, you know, like, and it's like, well, it's just, I can explain it to you. There's like a science behind it, and that's where I think like some really cool things can happen.
Right.
So, through our efforts to do that, and then like investments from towns, from lenders, and crowdsourcing is like a pretty exciting idea. Like I've been really focusing on how to bring people together that already have resources so that they can like spend it on that. You know, like how many people buy like coffee lattes, like when they really could be like buying one can of coffee and then doing it in their home, and they're saving all that money. And what if they took all that money and invested it in like these kinds of technologies, right? Like if there was like an easy way for like individuals to like just put very small amounts, maybe like $20 a month towards this like project, and like then they can have benefits of their returns on that investment instead of like some person that's like this larger like equity firm or equity individual that's like, I have all the resources, like, well, this is what I'm gonna allow this thing to do, or this company to do. I, as a one person with a very limited mind, as brilliant as they might be, they only have this one perspective and as many like voices as they can hear. Like, what if like, I mean, we can though, but we don't, right? Like, because like people are focused on what's next little dance, or what's the next scandal, or what is there to fear, or like why are they hurting me, or where am I lacking? And like, I don't know. Well, we'll get there. I have faith.
Yeah.
Like, it takes work. It takes people like you guys, you know, like doing the research, listening, and then sharing the voices. And you know, we gotta get our hands dirty. You know, not in like a bad way, but we gotta like take the soil and like put the seeds in the ground. We gotta take the solar panels and put them on the roof. And, you know, and no job is like below us if it's serving the greater good and like goodness. I think a job is below us if it's to evil. And that's a different conversation to be had, right? That's like more of a moral conversation than anything else.
Yeah. So I guess I'd like to hear your stance on this. Do you think there's a point where innovation could like potentially be like negative to the market? Like, for example, if this solar paint that we were talking about came out today and it was like twice as efficient as solar panels, all you had to do is sort of just like paint the roof and then it collected as much energy as regular solar panels. Do you think like, of course it would sort of like affect the market almost like negatively for a bit because of like how production would have to shift? Do you think there's a point when innovation could, in a way, like sort of like become like change things to the point where it can become like affect people, or do you think that it should be like we shouldn't worry about the thing, or we we should sort of jump at it, I guess.
Well, I think that we should jump at it, and also I can see how very fast innovation could leave people without work, or affect those like production avenues. And but I don't think that that's a reason to stop innovation. Like what if when the light bulb was invented, they said, well, what about the candle making industry?
Yeah.
Or when a car was invented, well, what about the horse and buggy industry? You know, like there's always people that are going to say, well, what about me and the things that I know? And I think that that's a very valid thing that they're saying. And like it would be beautiful if there was an easy way for them to skill up. Like if there was a way for like their community, their talent to say, I hear that, and we're moving towards that, the community's moving towards that. That's why I think that like, I think that one of the great services we could do to our community is lifelong free education. And I think we're getting a lot closer. I mean, like this whole pandemic thing made it so that a lot of people are now studying from home. So they're realizing that you don't need to have the brick and mortar to skill up, to gain those skills. And like you can have a lot of the classes recorded. You can have ways to make sure that our people know what they know. And like, why would you need to charge thousands of dollars for a video? It's already made once, right? And the tests are there, so like you can like, there's ways to verify that people are actually the people that are taking the tests, right? At that point, it's like, here you go. You want to learn how to do X, Y, Z? Take the classes, get skilled up, you pass the test, now you're certified. Now you can go do it, right? And I think that would make people feel a lot more less scared of these transitions in innovation. It's like I think that there can be scenarios where we like go too fast. Maybe the technology that we thought was really good ends up being bad for us and for the environment. And that's its own story. Like we just have to like analyze what what an industry lacks. Like all these larger industries, most of them lack is a full cycle, life cycle responsibility of their products and the containers that carry their products, like the plastic bottles, or the plastic inks, or like what happens to cars whenever they're no longer useful. What happens to like their recycling industries oftentimes, and the disposal industry. Like you'll see even like right here in this community, they have so much trash right there, right? And like why? Like what is it that we need to do differently so that there are these things, and that they. I remember somebody saying that humans are one of the only animals on the planet, if not the only animal, that creates trash. All these other creatures create waste, like their secretions, the things that they leave behind, end up being resources for some other creatures. And yet we as humans create these products that end up sitting there for thousands of years, not being resources, but end up killing other things, right? And like, that just doesn't feel very good. And I think we're smart enough to figure out a different way to do it, you know? And like I think the way we got here because we're like, what's efficient? What's gonna be the most cost effective so that we can flip a penny, so that we can like make money. And so in many cases it came from a survival need, you know, like we're like, oh, there's this huge need, like human population is growing faster than we can like make it happen, so we're gonna have to keep up with it. And I think that we also have enough humans that we can kind of figure that out too, you know, like it just, somebody was telling me recently, they're like, so much innovation that can happen in a community that's very thoughtful. Like if you get like 30 brilliant minds together, they have their needs met, and they can just focus on solving some problems. They can do a lot of amazing things, right? So like having incubators of like improvements could be a really, really powerful thing. But again, it takes investment, and investment, you know, the money goes where the attention goes, and where people can oftentimes get more money back. So either people are spending money because they think it's going to feel good, and a lot of this culture today is spending a lot of money to make me feel good. Immediate make me feel good. They aren't very focused on like what the long-term thing is. Like somebody else once told me, they're like, you know, whenever I would think of like my family or friends' health, I feel like I would almost like put more attention on that than like on my, like I was more kind to people that are around me than like myself 20 years from now. Like, you know, because like I can't conceptualize myself 20 years from now. I can conceptualize myself easily now, and I'm like, I want this right now. But like, how is this gonna affect like the future Eddie, or the like You know, like if I were able to like look at myself 20 years on the road, and I were to look back at what I'm doing now, would I be grateful for what I'm doing? Be like, thank you for having taken care of me. Whether that looks through like health, through speech, through eating, through saving money, through where we pay our attention, through the love that we share with others, you know. And that's a powerful thing. But like, you know, we might die tomorrow. So like, what? Where's that balance? I'm not sure. And I think that, yeah, it's a long answer, but I don't think we should stop innovating to deal with that. I think that technology can really help us. Technology can really help us be even more efficient, like, and have our internet locally. You know, like there's things like farm bots. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. And so how can we use technology to have our needs met, make sure that everybody has their needs met? I think we can get to the point where if there was
That'll be done soon.
yeah, these guys gotta work.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Envision is that we have this like platform. We have these things called social media platforms.
Yeah.
What if we had social wellness platforms that were dedicated to helping people be their most healthy, wholesome selves, and also dedicated to like helping them take care of the community, like gamifying taking care of the community. You know, like there's things like TaskRabbit now, Andy, like all these different platforms where like, or like Uber, you know, where people get paid to do this one little task. And what if we were able to like do that for like tasks that mattered more, right? And there was a more like pointed focus on nutrition. Like, wouldn't it be cool if you guys were able to like take your very specific macro or micronutrient count? So you were able to say like whether like, you know how diabetics prick their fingers?
Yep.
Like, or you could do like a urine test, and it tells you you have too much of this and too little of this. And not only that, you combine it with like being able to know how much food you're consuming. So like you're easily able to record and say, hey, this plate has a burger and like a steak and like lettuce and like tomatoes, whatever it is. And then in rough quantities, it calculates approximately how many nutrients you're getting from those foods. In combination with those reports that you're able to get, it tells you you're having too much of this nutrient from this food that you keep on eating. So cut back on that. It's very particular, it's very specific. And you have a lack of these nutrients, you can get it from this whole list of foods. It's all the foods that contain these nutrients. And not only that, now you click it, you select it, it tells you where in the local flora and fauna you can get it, because a lot of these trees and weeds are actually edible or medicinal. People don't know that. We lost the connection to what that is and what that means, right? So now you would know, like, oh, go look for this plant identifier app. You take a picture and it tells you exactly what plant it is, and then you can know how to process it, and you can know how to eat it. Not only that, maybe it's some exotic fruit that's like, this fruit has this very particular high quantity of zinc or whatever. I click on it, now it tells me what grocery store nearby has that fruit available for me, right? And then it invites you to connect with friends and family, maybe, or like people that have resources. Maybe somebody has some land right outside of the city that's covered. It's covered in a particular kind of tree, or like raspberries, and like most of these people that have land like that, sometimes they're like, it just goes to waste, you know, because it's just like, they're like, whatever. But like they're like, oh, this platform's cool. Let me go ahead and open this up so that like people can sign up during harvest season to just come harvest. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not gonna lose out if they harvest these raspberries, right? If anything, it's just like a benefit. Maybe they can accept donations. Be like, come harvest for free, and now this like resource that's been sitting there untouched and unused can be used for the community, can feed the community. And likewise, I think we can do that to a lot of different technologies and systems. So that's one of my little like baby brainchilds. Wholesome humanity is the thought. Wholesome humanity is the thought.
It's the right thought.
And that's the direction, you know. And I think that it's gaining traction. And I think a lot of people in this pandemic have realized how, because like they were like, how bad is this gonna get really? Like people didn't know that, are we not gonna be able to import food? You know, is it gonna be that bad that like all of those systems as sustenance are gonna like break down? Like, because your friends and your family are your friends and a family, and they're loving and kind and caring to you until they're very, very, very hungry. Right? right?
Yeah.
And then what happens? I don't know. But like history tells us some pretty dark stories of that, right? And there's abundance. So how can we avoid that? You know? And I think we can. I think we will. Like, thank you guys for like doing this work.
Yeah, no. So like in essence, basically what you're saying is that it's not the innovation that we should be like focused on. It's about whether or not people have like the tools, the skills, or are given like the opportunities to like accommodate to that innovation, right? So like, but if someone came up with solar paint tomorrow, it's not about, oh, they came up with solar paint, they're gonna destroy the production market. It's about whether those producers have the opportunity to go actually work in like the industry of like solar paint and stuff like that.
Right, exactly. We train their workers to be able to like then produce instead of solar panels. Now, like it maybe makes sense to produce paint now.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, that's right. Like it's along with innovation, I think it's like investment in social innovation and like individual social innovation. Like having that, like how can we, the more we empower individuals, the more our community improves. And I think that like there's this like fear in some levels of society that if we like educate too many people too fast, then who's gonna be the worker? But like if we have this like platform that shows us exactly what needs to be made for everybody's needs to be met at a basic level, I have faith in the goodness of humanity that they'll say like you could even have these alerts that happen, like Amber Alerts, right? So like it's like a great example in here in America are nuts, like chestnuts and all these different nuts, trees that the weird thing about them is that they don't produce every year, and it's very difficult to know when they're going to produce. Like so some people haven't been able to know, but when they drop their nuts, they go nuts, literally. Like there's so many of them, and so a lot of Native Americans used to have silos. They would go as a community and harvest these nuts and then keep them and store them, and that ended up being a lot of their protein for a long period of time. So what if we could find these kinds of pockets that we're missing out on, and now like we were like, hey, alert, guys! Turns out that this is the year where these nuts are falling, and here's a list of all the nut processing factories in your area. Go out with some friends for the weekend, go harvest some nuts, and you're gonna get paid for every pound of nuts that you go deliver to this. So now it's like, that's what I'm saying, it's gamifying it. You're like going out, having a picnic, you're having a blast, you're hiking, you're bringing out these resources that are not only good for you, you're good for the community, you're making money in the process, like, and you're knowing that this is something that's like, you're like, have a very direct mind, like, wow, this is how I'm possibly affecting the world, this is how I'm possibly affecting my community. I think that if people are able to see that they would really act on it a lot better. Because I think right now, like sometimes people feel stuck in their jobs because they're like, they don't see the bigger picture. They're like, how is this really helping? They're like working for that next paycheck to pay that next food bill, and that, you know, there's like this like depression epidemic that's happening, you know, where like, especially this past year, people lost this connection, you know, and like this rises in depression. I saw this article recently talking about depression pills aren't working as well as they used to. Should we be looking at new depression pills? And I'm like, I mean, maybe, but no. I think the answer is no. You know, like, I think like, what is it that's causing the depression? Where's the deficiencies? Where's the dis-ease? Like, with the lack of ease in our existence? How can we fix it?
Eliminate the cause.
Yeah, eliminate the cause. Because like I think we focus a lot on these band-aids. You know, how can we fix the symptoms? And, like, but what's really causing? And like, you know, you hear people talk about that. And I've recently been listening to this book called How Not to Die. It's a really good book. And it's about this guy that studied. He went to become a doctor in nutrition. He was looking at programs in nutrition. He noticed that a lot of doctor programs will only require like one course in nutrition for doctors. And like, how does that make sense? That's literally like everything. The fuel that's like creating, it's a source of our being, right? So I think that we've kind of lost our focus on what it like means to be human, you know? And we've placed a lot of focus on what it means to be a citizen, right? Which, that's beautiful in its own way. This is part of being a community. But what does it mean to be a human? What does it mean to be a person? And how do we reconnect the two? I think the moment that we can do that, then I think it'll end up helping solve a lot of other problems. Like, you know, like people will be like, oh, those people are kind of like this, and these people are kind of like that, and I don't like them because they're like that, and I think that that's based on like this fear of lack often. Like, oh well, like I might not have enough, or like I don't feel like I have enough yet. So like because I don't have enough, they shouldn't have enough either just yet. And if we can prove to them like no, there's enough, and I guess this is how we can collectively make it happen. I hope that people would contribute to that. Is there going to be sociopaths that are going to say, no, I deserve it all, and I don't deserve to do any work, and people are here to serve me? Well, yeah, there's been kings and queens, right? Like, yes, there are. So, you know, everybody has their own opinion. Even people in kingdoms thought that was like a beautiful way to live. Not that it wasn't. It's just kind of like I don't think that any person is more deserving of a happy life than I am, and vice versa. Right?
Yeah.
Those are my thoughts.
Well, now let's assume that even if we do manage to battle, you know, the current issues we're facing in the next generation or so, I mean, let's say the population inevitably keeps growing. So, well, yeah, what do you think about let's say the blue origin idea of not colonizing Mars or anything, but just sending people into orbit?
Yeah, that sounds like a cute thought, but like if we can't even take care of Biosphere 1, how are we going to be able to like take care of Biosphere 2, 3, X, right?
Yeah.
I think that because at one point in my thoughts, like exploration of how can I solve the world's problems, I was like, what? Like how can I extend the life of humans indefinitely? And I'm not talking about like one individual. I'm just talking about like the species. And perhaps we will evolve with the planet, and as the heat rises and the heat lowers, our children will be able to handle it better and better. Maybe not. And so I have faith that we might be able to. The reason that I say that is last year I like found out about coyotes. They have this really interesting thing about coyotes that apparently there's more coyotes now in the USA than there's ever been, even though right now the USA literally invests in people going on helicopters and shooting coyotes. And so in theory, we should have a lot less coyotes. But the female coyote will howl, and if she doesn't hear enough howls back, her litter will go from like 5 pups to like 20 pups. Right?
Wow.
And so that's DNA alteration, evolution, and like action, and very real time action that we can experience in our lifetime, right? And so I believe that our consciousness and our brain has a lot more power over our physical self and our reality than we are led to believe, or that we allow ourselves to believe.
Yeah.
And so I think that we just gotta, we can definitely build starships, and we can definitely go from planet to planet. I think that at some point we might be able to transfer consciousness even from one body to something else. I don't know that I'd be interested in that myself, right? But like I think that's a possibility. I think that the way life could like more easily, like where we're at right now, be transferred to another planet, it's more like a seed, like a pre-planted seed. Think like you put a seed in a pot and then give it the right environment and it grows. We put various DNA seeds or like embryos or things or bacteria or fungi or whatever in this ship, and we find all these different planets that have the theoretical capacity to sustain life. And we just send these ships out there.
And then let's see how they develop.
Life is going to continue. Because I think that life is part of the same, we call it soul, we call it consciousness. I think like even plants and everything that's alive at some point came from that one same point, and they just kind of like changed into whatever was giving it, whatever was giving it.
Kind of like the Big Bang.
Right, kind of like that, but like a very localized scenario, like in this planet, you know? And so I think that would happen in another planet. We would send these fungi over there, and then maybe humans would develop over there, but they would have like wings instead of arms or something. I don't know. Like, that's pretty out there thinking, but it's fun to think about, you know? So for our immediate reality, I think that just the more people focus on that self-sufficiency, that eco-conscious, like community-conscious, self-conscious living, the more likely we'll be able to survive. And if we can then take people that might come and say, we don't have enough for our community, you know, like, we're gonna take them here. and say, hold up a second. Yes, here it is. And can we please help you? Can we please teach you all it is that we're doing, what we're doing within your region, within this region, whatever that looks like. And I think that's potentially how wars could be avoided. The issue is this programming that happens, like this mind thinking that happens within communities, right? Like within like insular communities. And you hear this echo chambers where like people will be living in the same community for years and all they know is that, so they think anything outside of that is like ridiculous, or like this new thing is like just shattered my view of what I've thought for the last 30 years, 40 years. And so like they almost feel like they're dying because this idea that they've been holding on to is dying. And like, how can we help people process through that as it's just happened? And medicine looks like conversations. It looks like plants. It looks like just attention and listening, you know, and really listening and acting upon it. I'm personally not interested in being focused on starships at this time. I'm happy that there's some people that are focused on it. However, I would be really sad if most of our effort went to that instead of focusing here. You know, like it's like a yes and scenario. That's something that that's a statement that I've been loving. Like I've been trying not to say but is very like dismissive of what's been said. Like, yes and like yes, I hear that, and this is also a thing that can exist concurrently with it, right? So yeah, I'm interested in planting food forests and making houses, like communities where like the gardens are part of like the green space. You know, like the lawns are the biggest crop in America, and they don't serve any purpose besides like soil retention. But that could be fulfilled by some of the other things. You know, like foodscapes, plants. You know, like if we again invest our tax dollars or investment in like paying for local farmers that are now going through our communities, taking care of these local species. Like we'll probably need to adjust our diet as well, right? Like we don't need to be eating bananas. They're not growing from here all the time. You know, like we don't need to be eating mangoes if they're not growing here all the time. And we could grow them here if we created enclosed environments, like dug down kind of greenhouses with like glass windows that maintain the temperature that they would thrive in. That would be cool. However, like this land already provides. There's people surviving and thriving off of it before we even started importing those goods. So how can we like refocus on that? You know, how can we like harvest the berries that are around here, grow the kinds of potatoes that grow naturally around here? Like the less effort we can put into agriculture and food growth and anything, the better it is in society. Crazy to grow the one crop in this whole scenario when we could be growing a combination of crops together that now share nutrients with each other, they're designed to share nutrients with each other, and it just changes the style that we harvest as well, right? Like how it looks like more what I was mentioning earlier, where people are more empowered to know like, oh, okay, these are the community's plants, the community's resources, and there's these areas where I could personally harvest them, or me being a citizen of this town, I can go to the local grocery store and I have a credit automatically of like, I don't know, let's say like $100 like every week that I can just buy whatever because like I'm being able to like, my tax dollars are contributing to the production of these goods. And I don't know, I mean like, it sounds probably kind of socialist or communist and like that. I know those are like dirty words in certain communities, but I'm not interested in that, you know, in that defining of that like wording. Like I don't identify myself as like this or that. Like I see the merit in the various thought processes, and I'm really just interested in what are the solutions, right? Like, because we all eat the same way, we all drink the same water, we all bleed the same. So how can we take care of those problems? And like once we take care of those problems, then how can we also like make sure that you're taken care of? Like maybe you do want to take a vacation with your family to Aruba 6-7 times per year, and if you want to do these things, like cool. I'm not saying people shouldn't be able to create businesses and have like, you know, abundant access in their life. I'm just saying like how can we also make sure that people take care of the process, right?
Yeah.
Earnings, yeah. I mean, I don't want to get into like that government political topic this time. I think that somebody was telling me like that politicians, like, because in DC I have a lot of friends that work in various parts of government, and they're saying like there's this perception of politicians are just out for their own gain, their own pocket, and that's true for some of them. It's also true for many of them that that's not the case. That they are wanting to do good for their communities. However, they're reacting to what they're perceiving, to what they're receiving. So like the more that we can like do the work and be like, this is what they're focusing on, then they're gonna recognize like, oh, my community really cares about this. Which is where a lot of like, that's why there's so much effort and money put into like media, right? It's like you're able to like change the narrative or write a story in people's minds. So they can say, this is what we want. Even if they know, even if they don't know, or they know that it doesn't serve their greatest good, they perceive that it does. And I know I'm going on a rant, guys.
No. I was just checking the battery.
Yeah.
So like,
Oh yeah, it's
I
fine.
was because like we've been having battery problems all trip, but I really love this conversation that we're having. I'm vibing with 100%.
Yeah.
Not only do you have this like amazing mind, but you're putting in the work. You're actually like, because it's one thing to think all this stuff. It's another thing to actually be like, not just like, or like putting a couple dollars into it, but to actually be doing this thing every day.
Right.
I'm really glad that we caught all this on camera because I feel like this is something that like not only like people need to hear, but it's something that like people need to understand that these are the people who are installing like your solar system, These are the people putting solar panels on your roof. They're not people who are like, I guess like just trying to like make money or whatever. The people who really care about people. And so I guess connecting it like back to, I guess, like the solar itself. And it's not even like we went away from solar itself. We were more talking about like the heart of solar. And that's something that I guess this conversation has taught me, that like maybe solar isn't really about solar. It's about, I guess, going back to something that's more sustainable, something that's more simple, something that's more efficient, and something that's all around us, using the things that's right in front of us.
Right.
But connecting it back to like, I guess, solar, what's one thing that you would say like you would want the viewers to know about solar like right now, that you think it's really important that they should know right now about solar?
Yeah. I something that is important about solar is that recognition that this is a technology that is capturing a resource that's mostly not being used. Like, there's so much energy coming down that's not being used. And that's a very direct reflection of how we could do that in other areas of our life. Like I mentioned about the plants, there's so many plant resources that are not being seen and used. And so I think that this is like a technology that's managed to start breaking through and start like being able to really be implemented. And like anything else, it has some deficiencies, but the more we focus on how to make it more, and sustainable is a word that I've used for a while. I like the word regenerative, and I like the word thriving, and like healing as well, right? Like how can we do technologies that are allowing space for new generations to come through, so that we're not just extracting. The mining and the making of solar panels at some points can be that. I think historically some people have made that argument for that. That's why it might not be the one solution, because if we were to just use solar for everything and all the energy used, perhaps the effort that it would take to mine all of the metals and all the materials to do that might not be, it would create like a very similar problem in the other direction, right? So it's like, I think it's about balance. How can we, what's the solution for this local situation? And that's what the lady that does the energy said. It's a combination of things. And anybody who studies electricity grids knows that it's nearly impossible for today's society to get all of its electricity from one source, except for scenarios like the Hoover Dam, right, which is like this huge thing. But that's a very, very vulnerable spot for all those cities. Like that gets attacked.
Also, what if it
down.
breaks? Yeah.
Right. So like diversifying that source is important, and just taking time to be mindful and being grateful and graceful with oneself and the progress. Like you don't make switches from one day to the other, right? That's like a transition. But these are ways that you can start to transition, and there's a lot of companies and people out there focusing on helping people make that transition. So just don't be afraid to look. Don't be afraid to learn like new things. I think as people get older, they're like, oh, there's that new technology that came out. I'm not gonna learn that. That's just too much. It's like,
Don't be afraid.
don't be afraid. Just take a swing at it.
Yeah.
Like, even if you don't get it the first time or the second time or the third time, like, it's okay.
Yeah, you're good.
And it'll be alright. And yeah, a little quick for me and like the projects that I'm working on, and the website will start going live soon. Right now it's in development, but wholesomehumanity.org.
Wow.
And we are working on creating this app that I was mentioning. We're working on being able to bring that knowledge together and make it accessible, on building that social wellness platform, and then on being able to take these resources, because so many people want to invest in these things, like what I was just mentioning, and taking those resources and then channeling them towards these things that matter. And I think for many times we feel like we might not be ready. I've been like for like over a decade thinking these things, doing these things, like you're saying, doing the work in whatever way it looks like. But even in our imperfect selves, we gotta like take that leap of faith and try it, And so you guys go home after this weekend. It should go live. It's very interesting that you guys keep talking to me.
Yeah, we'll plug it. We'll plug it for sure.
Just check it out. It's like I said, it's very, very early in the stages of that website, but the ideas have been coming long before I was even born. You know what I'm saying? I'm standing on the shoulders of giants.
Oh, hydroponics was actually, I think it was Native Americans who did it. Then also Aztecs and Maya had their version of hydroponics.
The Chinampas. I would love to build a little community, a town where like the Texas River Walk, where like people, or like was it Florence, where they have the waterways, where people. That seems pretty cool to me. Where like you could just go around in a canoe and like that's taken care of by the community, and you could take your electric cart that's like kind of community owned, and you can just check it in wherever, and it's like made to the community. Or you could just grab one of those canoes and go canoeing around the town for a little bit. Like that sounds like a beautiful way to live to me, and I'm just trying to manifest, and I am manifesting those like really wholesome, beautiful community imagery scenarios. So I hope you guys are there building it with me.
And, well, before we go, just one thing in the context right now, where solar is right now in DC. How do we improve? Where do we go from what's already built? What do we keep doing? What do we stop doing? What do we start doing? From both, let's say, what should the government do? What should the companies like yourself do? And what should mainly the people do? Like, let's say someone wants solar. Well, where do they go? How do they proceed?
If somebody wants solar in DC, they should reach out to Revolution Solar and ask them to do a solar consultation, where they a representative will go ahead and calculate. Oftentimes, don't even have to do the site visit. We have like an aerial capability to measure the roof and know what sun exposure they're going to get.
We've seen that,
yeah. And so just checking out to see what it is. Like it's not. It's not gonna hurt, and it doesn't cost to see what it would cost, right? And so there is a lot of investment now from private individuals and from the city to be able to get people to do solar. So don't be afraid to take that direction. Don't be afraid to take that leap, and ask questions, even if they seem like silly questions. Like ask the questions. We want to like educate people on what that looks like. Like I had somebody ask me at one point, like they were like, so now that I have these solar panels on my roof, am I gonna have like a brighter house? Are my light bulb's gonna be brighter? And I said, that's not how it works. Let me explain to you how this works, right? And so like, it's okay to ask whatever it is to ask. For the city, I say continue investing. There's oftentimes these scenarios where, and I think they've been getting better, where we're not able to utilize, like we can't put all the panels that we could theoretically fit on a roof because we're limited by how much we're allowed to produce per location. Like it's like by percentage of usage. Like I think it's like a certain 100 plus percent. Like you can't produce
Oh,
more.
yeah.
You know, because and I don't know what the reasoning is behind that, frankly. Because if it's like if they're wanting to go and to be renewable, and there's this one location that can already take a lot more and produce a lot more, so what if they're making some money off of it?
It's
Like,
for
isn't
Pepco,
Isn't
yeah.
that the point? Like
Exactly.
so like that, like just kind of like I think that sometimes people will be like, all right, let's go, and then they'll press the gas at the same time. So you're pressing the
The brake
gas
and
and
the
the
gas
brake at the
pedal,
same
yeah,
time.
Great.
And it's like just start easing off of that brake, you know, and then and also like for companies, be righteous, you know, like don't just like slap things on somewhere for the sake of flipping a buck, because like that's not the point. Like it's like I appreciate about this company that we really do our best to make sure that we address any issues ahead of time or any issues that could come afterwards, right? And we own up and like act as quickly as we can to take care of people's homes, because it's their home at the end of the day, and so where they're living, and that's important, you know, and doing some good business practices. Don't take advantage of people, and I mean that could fall on deaf ears if people will take advantage of it, take advantage, right? But hopefully they don't. So, yeah.
Well,
Trying to invest in batteries. That would be a cool
Yeah.
thing. That would be a next step, I would say, for the government and for companies. How could we start offering batteries to individuals? Because that would be even more empowering for like the individual. I don't see the city investing in that very easily, because it's not really adding to their purposes, their goals of like adding electric to the grid. But perhaps seeing as companies seeing and offering that more readily, like saying like, hey, we can do this, and we can add these batteries to your system for this much more money, and like this is how your like financing might be affected by it, but these are the benefits for it, you know. Like not only is that an upsell for the company, that's also a really, in my opinion, a really great benefit, security benefit for the individual in that household. Because like I said, in a power grid outage scenario, now that particular house has power to last them through that process. So those are some of my thoughts.
Yeah. Well, it was great meeting you.
Yeah,
Eddie.
thank you very much.
We had a great
And
conversation.
yeah, we look forward to cooperate having Revolution Solar. We'll see where we can get. And yeah.
He's such a Eric just loses his name. He's such a good he does these plant walls. He'll take people into the forest and he'll like be like, this is that plant, this is that plant, this is the benefit, this is within a year grows, this is how you harvest it. So this company's called Plant Path Nursery. And another one.
So like when we were talking, like a couple times you said you were ranting, but we've talked to other like installers before. Like we kind of like we've talked to people about like their experiences. We've had like a lot of like interviews. We really like to have like unique perspectives, and that's exactly what you brought to it. So it was really a really refreshing take on everything. So we really appreciate what you've been telling us.
And that was only the beginning. I mean, you can only imagine where
Yeah, the depth of where you can go into each area. I mean, even the school system, like what we're teaching each other in school, I think can be really changed for the better, right? Like how many people are taught how to grow food? How many people are taught how to like measure their like nutritional balance? Like along with that like app that I was mentioning, I'm thinking of doing like mental health care checks. So then I can also tell you when your nutrients were at this level, you were saying that you're feeling really good. When your nutrients were at this level, you were saying that you're feeling really bad. So maybe your particular body
nutritional personal.
likes this particular nutritional profile, because not everybody's the same, right?
Nutrition
so
is very personal.
You might have more zinc that you like than this person or whatever. So
because there's no way you can do it scientifically. I mean, not at this stage for sure. Because it's so complicated that you need to take a hands-on approach with these types of things. And that's what we moved away from.
And this user interface, like the more people use it, that's where the scientific approach comes in.
Because then you can find new things. Because it's like it's basically just like a giant survey in a way, like almost like collecting data on a like just a lot like a much larger group of people than just like if you said, okay, people volunteer.
Right.
See what we can do.
So for this one in particular, what I think would be cool is if like the government or like counties, school districts would focus on like offering like once the software is ready and like the ability to test and track those nutrients is ready, maybe that could be offered like as a high school class for like a year, right? Where like, or like a college class for like a year, where like those students start like being like, oh, I'm gonna just, maybe college would be better just because look at the age scenario, but like I'm gonna pee in this cup every day. I'm gonna like maybe do a patch that helps me, whatever it looks like, you know, to like check my nutrients, and maybe it's like periodic. I think right now that's where we're lacking. It's a little expensive to get all those full macro and micronutrient profiles. I think it's very expensive because not that many people are requesting it. Like we're saying, like we talked about the solar panel thing, right? Like people are just not demanding it. There's no attention. But the moment that we're like, we want this, we want this, we want this, and that's frankly where a lot of the money will also be invested. So 2 places where that money will be invested: developing the software, and then developing and lowering the price of the technology to be able to measure those things.
Yeah, and we can kind of already see like there are some ways that we're actually going in that direction. Like my phone now, like I have an app on my phone that I think it just comes with like the software now that like it basically tracks my sleep, and I don't have to listen to it. But I've decided like, well, every like week or so it tells me I've been sleeping less, so I guess I'll just start looking at it more. And then also when I listen to music too loud, there's an app now that's just like it tells you, and it's one of those apps that's not like you download. It's like it just comes with the phone now. It's just like Apple sort of just put it in there, like it tells you if the music is too loud. So I think it needs to be something like that, where it's just already there for you.
It's already there, yeah, integrated. And so we'll
and it gets to a much crazier level. I mean, there's now any regular smartwatch can even blood oxygen, and
So,
and it's a very simple solution, non-invasive, not everything.
Non-invasive.
Exactly.
It's not like it's invading your privacy. It's just like,
and I can see that like being like one of the potential like
the reasons like for people like they're trying to get in, like trying to know everything about.
They're trying to get my DNA. They're trying to get like, it's like, oh no. But like that would be another interesting thing if people did want that. Like if they were like, I'm curious to know, how.
Just give them the option to do it.
How does my DNA relate to that? Because like then you can really track the propensity for certain like diseases or certain like desires within certain like DNA sequences, and I mean, people get a lot more scared with that thought. So I don't know that I'm like pining for that, right? I'm like more focused on like what's this very real, like I can see an apple. You can't really see my DNA. I am my DNA, but like it's a little bit more theoretical for folks.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you should be very proud of yourself. Like we both wish you like a ton of success in the future.
Thank you guys.
For
And
sure.
I hope to see you guys doing. I know that I'll see you guys doing some awesome stuff alongside. Whenever you graduate and you figure out your things, like there's a lot of work that needs to be done. It's endless.
Sure.
We're always works in progress, right? So thank you for being out here, and doing all this kind of recording.
There's too much to do.
So much to do, I like the idea. It's like so much we get to do, right?
Yeah.
That's
a good way to look at it.
Yeah, because sometimes, especially when I like don't want to do it, I'm like, I get to do it. All right, let's go. Because even if it doesn't seem fun, if it's necessary, I'm healthy,
so we'll do it.
I'm capable, so I get to do it.
Yeah, that's such a good way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
So
Then the outcome is worth it.
yeah, oftentimes.
Should we do like a outro or something? Just like for the camera?
Oh,
say like
a bit later.
okay, cool.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. Awesome. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you
It's been a
guys.
Thank you
pleasure.
so much.
Yeah.
So impressions? That was a crazy 1.5 hours or even more. That might have been almost 2 hours.
Yeah, we got a lot of info, a lot of stuff jam-packed in there. And not just information, but also just a lot of like deeper concepts about solar, about sustainability, about preserving this planet. So really good stuff.
So impressions? Good?
Impressions?
Review?
Out of 10, I'd say it was about an 11.
Yeah, more or less,
Yeah, more or less.
But now we gotta plug for something. Eddie is doing a sustainable website, and the idea behind it is, it's called
Wholesomehumanity.org.
Wholesomehumanity. Yep. .org. There we go. Everyone, make sure to check that out. It's going online soon. And essentially, what this is, it's about how to make humanity more wholesome.
Yeah, stay tuned for that.
These are some very interesting ideas, which you probably just heard in the interview. And guess what? I mean, I'm sure we're coming back for more ideas as well.
Yeah, signing out, guys.
Stay regenerative.
Stay healed.
Yep.
Thank